Greetings, fellow seekers of the sinister and the unexplained. I'm thrilled to have you back in the GrimmNationVault. Today, we're delving into the eerie and mysterious world of our /CreepyEncounters, where the line between the ordinary and the paranormal blurs into darkness. Get ready for a spine-tingling journey as we unearth some of the most unsettling tales shared by the brave souls who've faced the inexplicable. Without further ado, let the tales begin. Welcome to GrimmNationVault, where the stories are dark, the encounters are creepy, and the fear is very, very real. Let's dive in. I have a stalker, and it is making me feel scared. I, 16 female, have recently changed schools, and everything seemed to be fine. I even made a few new friends, and met with a few past friends I already knew. And everything was going absolutely great, until, of course, something had to go wrong. For some context, I have a good friend there, but we're not that close to be sharing things that are personal. We just discuss things about school, studies, and things we both like. And here's where the story begins. In 2023 September, at the start of the school year, I had found a little spot for myself to sit at. It was outside and very quiet, which I like because I'm extremely introverted. I've been at that place multiple times, usually sitting with my notebook, writing stuff, and drawing. After a good long while of hanging out the place, I started to notice that there was this student, always standing quite far away sitting on his phone. At first I thought nothing of it, since he's not the only one who's hanging at the spot, and there were other people sitting or walking around. However, I've been getting this awful good feeling that I'm being stared at, in the middle of drawing or writing. Of course, again I still thought nothing of it, since I kept thinking it was just me being paranoid. Well, I started sitting inside, just to test that theory. And where I was sitting, there was a window, ground level from where you could see the whole place from below, but because it was ground level, none would be interested to look at the windows. First 2 days everything was the same, but on the third day he stopped coming to that place, which made me freak out, and kind of made my stomach feel upset. I went back to sit on my usual place and he came back there. I had to pretend I didn't notice him, that I didn't know his existence. It'd be safer if I didn't acknowledge him, so I stopped coming to that place entirely. And yes, it might be little proof, but there's more. On a little break day our teachers decided us to give, we hung outside all day, and you were allowed to stay inside if you perhaps had the need for medical attention or something of that sort. I went to a very isolated place, different from the one I've been coming to before. It was basically a parking lot near the school. I sat and as usually, I was drawing and writing. I've been so focused on my notebook that I didn't notice my surroundings. To my horror, I heard a familiar voice not far away, literally over the car where I was sitting on the staircase. I heard that darn voice of this creepy stalker guy. I felt as if my inspiration ran dry, my heart feels to my knee, and I seriously felt nauseous. He was on a phone call or something, but before he was inside the school, going to the bathroom, and mind you the parking lot is quite far, and none can really see where you're sitting unless they get closer. Where I've never seen him on a phone call, or never saw him using his phone there, always he was sitting at my favorite spot. Which now I despise. Now I told the teachers that I felt a bit sick, which was true, and they let me sit inside till we had to leave from school. I wanted to talk to my new friend about it, who knows him and frequently talks to him. But I feel like I'll say something inappropriate, and he might actually distance himself from me. He's a great friend, I'd hate to lose him, but I also want to do something to stop this matter from escalating. If I go and talk to the stalker himself, he'll feel like he was finally noticed, and maybe have a sense of victory that could encourage him to keep stalking me. I really don't know what to do other than try to keep ignoring him, and I can't give him any attention or notice him in the slightest, but the fear that he will do something creepy is making me feel scared when I attend school. If you're finding the story spine-chilling and the mysteries captivating, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, and subscribing to GrimmNationVault for more dark tales and creepy encounters. Dodge the bullet, almost, literally. Not so much creepy, just fucking terrifying. You can see my last post for a little bit of timeline context, but this situation happened about 2 years before that one, when I was 18 to 19, living on my own for the first time. As freshmen in college, our days consisted of going to class in the mornings, then getting Chipotle, then going back to the apartment and smoking weed for the rest of the day/night. Nearly every single day, LOL. Actually, no. Not even nearly, that was literally exactly what we did every single day. Me and my roommate, let's call him James, had a close friend from high school who would stay with us often, let's call him Tyler. Tyler would come over to smoke at our apartment regularly since we had a safe place to do it away from his parents' house where he was living at the time. One night Tyler was over and we were smoking per usual and decided to go walk around the apartment complex. It wasn't late, maybe 8 p.m. As we were walking, a pair of guys who looked to be a little bit older than us approached and asked us if we had any weed. James, the dullard of the group, immediately said something along the lines of, "Yeah, we could get you some." Tyler and I were already in the process of saying no when he said that to them, as we live, in a state where you actually had to be really careful about weed. Next thing we know, James has invited the two guys into our apartment to smoke with us, despite our discontent. Remember, we're 18 and 19 at the time, high, and just stupid as hell. So the two guys come into the apartment, we smoke, and the whole time they're just being weird. One of the guys keeps making jokes that he's an undercover cop, saying stuff like, "Notice how I'm not inhaling all the way. Undercover cops can smoke weed, but as long as they don't inhale, then it's fine." Now, in retrospect, these guys were just a little older than us and were totally fucking with us by saying stuff like that. But it freaked Tyler and I out. So much so that after the two guys left, we insisted on going and hiding our bags of weed before the inevitable police raid rained down on us. Disclaimer, I know we were stupid for actually thinking that they were cops, but we didn't know any better at the time. We were paranoid, and all we could think about was the possibility of getting a misdemeanor weed conviction, which carried a $1,000 fine and 1 year probation. Well, those two guys do not end up being the creepy part of the encounter. Tyler and I, in a state of weed-induced paranoia, decide to go hide our backpack full of weed in the woods outside of the apartment complex until we could confirm that our apartment would not be raided. By this point, it's probably about 1:30 a.m. So, we set off on our journey into the woods, hide the weed, and identify a few landmarks to ensure that we can find it again. Because God forbid we lose that ounce of weed. We feel a lot better after hiding the evidence and set back towards the apartment. We re-enter the complex and are walking along jovially towards my unit. As we're rounding the corner to my building, I hear the sound of the pant legs of athletic pants sweeping together, as if somebody is running, sprinting up behind us. Before we can even turn around, we hear a deep voice yell from behind, "Get on the ground." I turn around long enough to see a masked man pointing a pistol right at us. We both immediately hit the deck as he screams at us to give him all of our money. Needless to say, we were 18 years old and weren't exactly carrying large amounts of cash on us. We emptied our pockets, but all we had were our cell phones and empty wallets. He became increasingly angry and told us to get up and face away from him. Now, this was obviously already a scary situation, but this is when it got extremely terrifying for both of us. Just a couple of days before that, two teens had been brutally murdered in our area in the same fashion, forced to face away from their killer and ultimately shot execution style in cold blood. And they hadn't caught the guy yet. It was all either of us could think about in that moment, as it was a highly publicized crime that everyone in our area had heard about. I know I'm totally outing my general location right now, but I know people are going to want to know what case I'm referring to. Plus, neither of us live in that area, or even that state anymore. So, look up Jeffrey Hazelwood murders online for more context. Happy ending. The guy proceeds to instruct us to walk. He walks behind us all the way to the exit of the apartment complex, and as we exited, we heard the sound of running again, this time away from us. We slowly turn around and realize that he's gone, but we were still so freaked out that we kept walking and called a friend to come pick us up from a nearby Waffle House. To this day, I'm so glad that only psychological, rather than physical, harm was dealt to us on that night. Oh, and by the way, we went back to the woods first thing the next morning and picked up the backpack in order to continue our era of stoner degeneracy. He was looking back at me through the peephole. Last year, I moved to another city after finishing high school. I assessed several college options and decided on one that would have me move roughly 3 hours. I found an apartment where I would be able to live without roommates, and that was in a safe part of town with reasonable rent. It was close to some attractions in the city, which was an added bonus to me, as it would still allow me to have a reasonable social life. For the first 4 months or so it was great. There were absolutely no problems or safety concerns of any sort, and I managed to become good friends with a guy who studied at the same college as me. He coincidentally lived around 5 minutes away from me, so we would often hang out at each other's place. One night, just as winter started, he called me over to play video games and hang out. We had a pretty chill night, drank a few beers, had a good few laughs, and enjoyed ourselves. At around 1 a.m. we decided to call it a wrap, and I headed home to my apartment. When I got back home, I decided to head out to the balcony that overlooked the entrance of my building to smoke a cigarette. I vividly remembered looking around and seeing absolutely nobody. It was a cold winter night, and it wasn't the weekend, so understandably everybody was at home. Besides the usual car or two passing by, it was dead quiet. Once I finished my cigarette, I decided to call it a night and got ready for bed. I was understandably confused when I heard a short ring on my doorbell. I stood in the center of my room for a solid few seconds as confusion and a little bit of fear set in. I snapped out of it and decided to tiptoe to my door and to just try and hear if anyone was outside. My immediate thought was that my friend came over to drop off something that I might have forgotten, but I thought to myself that he would have texted me or called. I probably listened for half a minute or so when the person once again rang the doorbell and softly knocked a few times. I was stood still and didn't want to make a sound so that I wouldn't give away the fact that I was at the door. I heard the stranger pacing around the apartment for a few seconds before he stopped. I waited for any sort of noise, but it was quiet. That was when I decided to look at the peephole to see that he hopefully had left. I picked up the cover of the peephole and took a look. My legs pretty much went numb as I saw a hooded figure looking straight into the peephole. He was holding the zipper of his hoodie so as to cover his face. All I could really make out was his forehead and eyes. He must have either heard me lift the cover or my heavy breathing, because right away he moved from the peephole and said, "I know you are at the door." By this point, I was pretty much shivering in fear, but mustered up the courage to say, "I'm calling the cops, man." He laughed and said, "Sure thing, big guy." He proceeded to wipe away the door handle with his sleeve before walking off. I understandably called the police. When they came over, they informed me that I wasn't the only one. He had been doing this for at least a month, and they suspected him of at least one home invasion where a father chased him out the house. I crashed at my friend's house for around a week or so after this before going back into my apartment. It's been a year and Eve never heard of any news about him. He could have been arrested by now, but as far as I know he hasn't been. I find it more likely that he simply moved to a different area. I'm not sure if he had any violent intent or not, but either way, let's seriously not meet again. Someone tried to break into my car with my friend inside and then tried to follow us home. Friday night, my friend and I stopped at my regular gas station to pick something up. I pulled up and left her in my passenger seat with the car running and asked her to lock the doors. When I came back out, I went to open my car door and she let me in before telling me that less than a minute before I walked out, a man came out of the gas station. My driver's side was facing away from the gas station, and he walked up behind the car, between the gas pump and my side, and tried to open the back driver's side door. When it didn't open, he kept walking, made eye contact with my friend, and then went and got into the passenger seat of a truck parked nearby. As he was getting into the truck, she saw me walk out. It's worth mentioning that the city I live in is the top sex trafficking city in our state, and our state is the 9th largest sex trafficking state in the USA. At this point, I'm already pulling out of the gas station and getting the hell away from these people. When I stop to turn right out of the gas station, my friend yells at me, "Holy shit, they're following us. They're F***king following us." I'm not having this, so I whip a right turn and head for the highway connection. They're still behind us, so I end up pulling some fast and furious type driving to put as much distance and vehicles between us and them as possible while telling my friend to find us the nearest police station. When she puts my phone up on the stand in front of me, I look at where we're going and decide to take a longer way that doesn't make sense to take it. You're going to the area we're about to go to. Well, they continue to follow us. Finally, we merge onto the major highway and get some vehicles in between us, but they're driving recklessly to keep up behind us. Finally, I cut in front of a line of speeding cars, and we lose them until we get to the police station. We ended up sitting there for a while digesting what happened before checking the exterior of my car for anything they may have put on it. We then take another roundabout way to go back to my house where we'll pass the gas station again, but where it gives us enough time to notice if they follow us again. I know this wasn't the smartest idea, but whatever. As we pass the gas station, we see that the truck is parked in the parking lot of the shopping center behind the gas station facing the road that we had taken the last time we pulled out. I ended up going to a church near my house to avoid going home, and we called 911 and filled the operator in on everything. Since then, we've heard nothing back, not that I expected to, and I've been anxious every time I leave my house, especially after dark. It's almost like I have this weird feeling I'm being watched, even thought I know it's in my head. No thank you. P.S. Any advice is welcome. Update: I went into the local police department today and filed a report. At the time of the encounter, there were reasons that prevented us from going into the police station unless it was 100% necessary. Many of you mentioned that I should have immediately gone in with the plate numbers, and it was stupid not to, but we didn't have them. My state only has rear-facing plates, and since they were never in front of us, we never had the opportunity to get the numbers. Additionally, the only description we had was a blue work truck with orange lights on top and a ladder in the back, as well as the fact that the two people were Hispanic males, one short and one tall. That wasn't going to help with much of anything at the time, especially considering that if they were traffickers and saw us go to the police station, we doubted they'd be in that vehicle in the area for too much longer. One user said, "Good thing you locked your door. You did all the right steps, including driving to a police station. If you're worried about future endeavors, consider self-defense training and tools." The op replied, "Thank you. Self-defense training and preparation is actually what saved our asses in this situation. I think everyone, especially women, should have to take those classes in school. People always think it'll never happen to them until it does." Who the hell was that? This happened at around 15 years ago and nothing became of it, but it was so weird I think about it regularly. I was 16 years old at the time. It was early evening, so getting dark, but not yet pitch black, and I was walking home from the bus stop after seeing some friends. I'd just turned from the main road onto my quiet street when I heard my name being called by a male voice. I was still trying to figure out where the noise was coming from when I see a guy jumping out a car and jogging towards me smiling. Again, he says my name and asks me how I've been. As he's getting closer, I'm waiting for the penny to drop, but even when he's close up I realize I do not know this man, lol, and it's clear from my face I'm confused. Seeing my confusion, he says, "Don't you remember me?" "It's me, X," and I say, "No, sorry, I don't remember meeting you before. How do you know my name?" He says something incredibly vague, that he's my ex's friend, and I say, "Okay, but what's my ex's name then?" and he starts laughing. I'm absolutely convinced we had never crossed paths before in our lives, and he looked like he was in his 20s, so how would he know my ex, who was my age? He still had this unwavering, creepy smile on his face. I think he was either high or drunk, but I started to feel unnerved and wanted to end the conversation ASAP. He asks me to come hang out with him, and I say no, sorry, need to get home. He's being insistent, but I'm being firm and saying I need to get home. I'll get in trouble if I'm late. My parents are expecting me, etc. And I just try to end the conversation politely by saying nice to see you, but I have to go, and I start walking away. He seems to accept it and thankfully goes back to his car, and I feel relieved to see him drive away. Until I turn the corner, he's parked literally over my house's drive and is standing outside his car. Again with the weird intense smile. Now I'm fully freaking out. He's blocking my entrance to my house. I can't figure out if it's a fluke or if he knows where I live, but I don't want to walk into my home while he's there. I literally stop in my tracks, and he again walks towards me and starts with the "come hang out, we'll go for a drive," etc. I'm freaked out and also annoyed at the fact that he's not leaving it alone, so I say, "Dude, I don't know you. I'm not going to go for a drive with some random guy." He then laughs and points to his car and says, "But I'm with my friend," and for the first time I look into the car and see a girl looking at me. She looks high out of her mind and is just staring directly at me. Honestly, my heart dropped looking at her face. She looked miserable and so spaced out. I can't remember how I got rid of him, but I just stood my ground and kept saying, "No, I don't want to go for a drive. I'm going home," etc. I stood in the same spot. There was no way I was going into my house while he was there, until he eventually gave up, got back in the car and drove away, all while this girl still stared at me. Like I said, nothing ever came from it. I never saw the guy again. I have no idea how he knew my name. The girl in the car looked older than me, in her early 20s most likely, so at the time I assumed she knew what she was doing, but every so often I think of her and wonder if she needed help. Or maybe it was all innocent. I hope she's okay though. Remember, the Grim Narrative Vault thrives on the stories shared by our community. If you've had a creepy encounter of your own, drop it in the comments below and become part of the Grim Nation. Your story might be the next one to captivate our audience. As we fade into the shadows, remember to embrace the unknown, for it is within the mysteries that the most captivating stories unfold. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may your nights be filled with intriguing tales from the Grim Nation Vault.